In my last video, we made homemade almond milk, and I told you at the end of the video not to throw away the leftover almond pulp at the end because you've got all this good almondy flavor that you can use in other recipes. So what I like to do is just store my almond pulp in any sort of container in the freezer until I'm ready to use it. And what can you make with it, you ask? I thought the easiest thing to start with would be fudge. I had to play around a little with some consistencies, but I think I've got what actually tastes kind of like a homemade Lara bar, if you've seen those in the store. So I'll show you how to do that, and then I'll do a slightly more decadent version. First of all, before you start any recipe with your almond pulp, you want to make sure to thaw it out thoroughly the night before. For our easy 4-ingredient no-bake fudge, this is what you'll want to use. The almond pulp, obviously, and then some cashews just to kind of mix up the flavors because these are a little more mild. Cocoa powder, obviously. And then this one ingredient that I have to say I've seen in a lot of natural recipes, and I didn't really get what the big deal was. Now I get it. They are medjool dates. These are whole dates. They are usually unpitted, so you have to pit them yourselves, but they add a really good sweetness and they help the consistency of a lot of recipes to hold it together, and you can save from having to use honey or agave or any other sweetener. They are definitely better than the pre-packaged dried pitted dates. If you only have access to those, I remember it well from living in Korea, you just have to make sure to soak them a little beforehand, play around with the consistency, but if you can get these medjool dates, they are delicious. I'm starting with half a cup of cashews, raw cashews, and I'm going to process them into a fine powder. And then I'm going to take a half cup of this almond pulp that I have and add that to it. This is going to make a pretty small batch, but you can easily double or triple it. Now here's where you can get really technical with it. If you want it to be super fine powder, you can go ahead and sift this. I don't really have time for that today because I just want to eat my fudge, so we're going to move on. Next is the cocoa powder. Now you don't have to be as sparing with cocoa powder as you do with, say, melted chocolate or chocolate chips because it is much lower in calories. So I am going to go ahead and add 5 tablespoons of cocoa powder. So what I'm going to do now is just take this off the base and put it into its own separate bowl. When I turn the dates into a sweetener, I want to do it on their own and then mix the two later. It just keeps a nice smooth consistency this way. So this is the boring part. You have to pit the dates. Depending on the size of the date, I would say to use about 8 to 10. And then we're just going to pulse this until it becomes like a date paste. So once I've got this very clear ball of date paste, it's ready to go. I can add back in the dry ingredients. And last time. So then this spreads just like dough or pie crust. And you can just use your hands if you want. So then I'm just going to pop this in the freezer for an hour or two, but then keep it in there because the great thing about the dates is that they never fully harden. So you can eat it and cut it right out of the freezer. So if you want a fudge that's a little more decadent than just fruits and nuts, you could add a little something extra like chocolate chips or what I found, which is cocoa butter or cacao butter. It really does look like a stick of butter. This is only about 2 tablespoons or so. It has a very high melting point though, so I'm just going to pop it over a low flame and just let it melt, and then I will add it to my fudge. Otherwise, the ratios, the ingredients, everything stays the same. So I'm pouring the cocoa butter right into my mixture. So remember, a couple of things. If you want a super smooth texture, sift the nut flour. If you want it extra decadent, you can add cocoa butter or chocolate chips. And if you want very basic, just go with cocoa, dates, cashew, almond, and you've got yourself super easy quick fudge. So I had a batch of fudge from last week in the freezer, and I just took it out. I'll show you how easy it is to cut right out of the freezer. Yum. Enjoy.